Police officers, have you ever witnessed an arrest that felt wrong? I've had to detain people when I've agreed with their reasons for acting out, but I knew it was for their own safety. I worked in a prison, and the threat of violence and personal injury could get quite high if a client went against what the others were doing. So even if the guy was morally right, we'd remove him for his own safety. It didn't happen often, but when it did, I felt bad for the guy. Usually, being able to talk a person out of a situation is a much more valuable and utilized skill than arresting someone where I worked. Well, utilized by the good officers anyway.
That's an interesting perspective. It must have been hard sometimes, knowing you had to step in for someone's safety even when they were in the right. I guess being able to talk things down can really change the atmosphere. It's crazy how important communication is in tough situations. You probably had some moments that stuck with you, even if they weren't super common. At least you were looking out for them, even when it felt wrong.
Heavily sanitized to protect information, and I'm not saying the arrest was wrong either. A suspect had left their full real details at a cosmetics store and then proceeded to steal some items from that store. They had literally given every detail about themselves, including email address. We all thought it was fake details, but it all checked out. When we apprehended the suspect, she told us she suffered from some form of kleptomania where she stole items when she was stressed and didn't even know she was doing it. I've heard a lot of ridiculous excuses from suspects in the past, but leaving your actual real name and address and then stealing items from the same store with CCTV covering, it seems like this person did have a condition that needed therapy more than criminal intent.
That's an interesting situation. It shows how some people's actions can be more about underlying issues than just crime. Like, she might not have even been aware of what she was doing due to her condition. It's strange to think someone would leave all their info behind and still act that way. Makes you wonder about the lines between wanting help and the choices we make under pressure. Certainly a unique case.
Wow. I just want to say thank you to everyone for contributing. I didn't anticipate to hear about law enforcement from around the world. I know that this is the internet, and not all the answers should be taken at face value. But it was interesting because I didn't define what I meant by wrong. I did this on purpose. I wanted to see how everyone would answer, aside with gaining perspective on the law enforcement side.
It's cool how online discussions can bring out different perspectives. I remember asking my friends about what wrong meant to them in a casual chat. Everyone had their own take, influenced by personal experiences. Some thought about moral dilemmas while others focused on legal issues. It showed me how varied people's views can be and made me realize how context shapes our understanding of right and wrong.
I came here looking for a particular young officer during the G20 riots and mass arrests in Toronto, most of them uncalled for. He walked by our cramped detention cell and said, "I'm so sorry, if I could get you guys out I would, this is wrong." If you're out there, man, your sympathy wasn't lost on us. Your words were one of the only things that day we appreciated.
It's interesting how a simple act of kindness can stick with you. That officer's empathy in such a chaotic situation probably meant a lot to those inside. It's a reminder that even in tough times, there are people who care. Little moments like that can really make a difference. It's nice to hear when someone stands up for what's right, even if it's just with words.
A friend of ours got arrested like that in Texas for sleeping in his car outside our house after a party. He refused to sleep in the house because he didn't want to put us out and was too buzzed to argue with. We woke up to a ruckus in the middle of the night, and it was a bunch of Ector County deputies arresting him on our front lawn. They beat him up pretty bad as well. We asked them why they were arresting him for, and they said DUI and trespassing, and we tried to argue with him about it. He was parked in our driveway on our property, and they just told us to shut the hell up and go back inside, or they'd arrest us as well. Small-town Texas cops are a breed apart.
That sounds rough. It's crazy how things can escalate like that. Your friend probably thought he was being responsible by not crashing inside. It's pretty wild to see cops act like that, especially over a situation that seems pretty harmless. Just shows how different things can be in small towns. Not a great experience to wake up to. Hopefully, your friend is alright now.
Gee, something similar happened to my husband. He and his then fiancée were in a parking lot sleeping near the bar. She was too drunk, and he was too tired to drive, and no hotels were nearby, so they just crashed in the back seat. LAPD woke them up about an hour into their snooze. Husband explained he was too tired to drive and didn't want to be a danger on the road. They insisted he get back on the road because they couldn't sleep here and could only sleep in designated rest stops. Of course, he knew of none in Los Angeles. He felt it was mind-blowing they would rather force him to drive dangerously tired than just let him crash in this empty parking lot.
That's a wild story. It's crazy how sometimes the rules seem more important than common sense. You'd think they'd understand wanting to stay safe. Instead, they pushed him to drive when it's clear he wasn't in a good state. It's just one of those moments that makes you think about how systems work, or don't work, really. At least they got through it okay.
Cop in a driver safety point reduction class told us to put the keys in the glove box and get in the back seat if you needed to sleep it off. It's intent to operate a vehicle in New York that would get you arrested. Even sitting in a parking lot with the car off and keys out is not good enough. I never drink and drive, but they're super serious about it in New York.
That's definitely a smart move. I guess it's good that the class shared that info. I never really thought about how just being in the front seat can have consequences. It makes you realize how strict the laws can be around drinking. Always better to play it safe than deal with the hassle. Had a friend who learned that the hard way, and it wasn't pretty. Better to just crash where it's safe.
I never understood the logic behind saying someone not actually driving the vehicle is legally still in control of the vehicle. If I pull into a gas station, run in and leave the engine running while my child sits in the back seat, and I stupidly leave my car in gear, and the car pulls forward and runs a red light / hits another vehicle / etc., do we hold the child responsible? They were in the car with the keys.
That's an interesting point. It makes you think about responsibility in strange situations. I remember a friend who left their dog in a car with the engine running, thinking it was fine. The dog ended up stepping on the gear shift. Thankfully, nothing bad happened, but it raised questions about accountability. It's tricky when you think about who should really be held responsible in those situations.
I used to work for a tow company that had a contract with local PD and has a very similar situation happen to myself. Showed up to a call for a PD tow cop, gives me the keys, and I start hooking it up. A few seconds after I get my J-hooks under the car, a guy comes up asking me to put it back down and wait for his truck to show up. Becoming aggressive and advancing on me as I winch it up my bed while telling him that's the PD's choice, not mine. Once he's within 5 feet of me, I turn around expecting to get punched as the cop ran up and arrested him. He was going to get off with driving with no license and not having his car registered / using illegal plates. TL, DR cops are way nicer than they need to be unless you're an ass, and it's all about safety.
That sounds like a pretty intense situation. It's interesting how people react in those moments. You were just doing your job, and it could have escalated if the cop hadn't stepped in. It's a reminder that safety is key, not just for you but for everyone involved. Seems like the cop handled it well, showing that maintaining order is important, especially when emotions are running high. Sometimes, it's just about staying calm and letting things play out.
A judge tried to keep me in jail for a week over an unpaid ticket. After he told me my fate, I asked him, wouldn't it make more sense for me to go to work for the week and make the money to pay my fine instead of sitting in jail and getting fired? Thankfully, I didn't have a record, so he cut me loose about 20 minutes later.
That's a rough situation. You handled it pretty well though. It's crazy how sometimes a simple question can shift things. The judge must have realized it didn't make sense to keep you locked up. At least you got out in time to sort out the fine. Not everyone gets that lucky. It's a reminder to stay on top of things like tickets or risk dealing with a judge.
Brass knuckles were banned in the 40s along with switchblades and many other weapons used by organized crime. Nobody drafts laws that expire, so they're still banned. The same laws heavily restricted automatic firearms, as well as sawed-off guns, suppressors, and the like. Edit. I grew up in New York where everything's illegal, my bad.
Yeah, growing up in a place like New York really shapes your perspective on laws. You see all these restrictions and start to wonder what's really the point. Brass knuckles and switchblades just feel like part of the culture there, even if they're technically illegal. It's interesting how some things stick around in people's minds even when they're off the streets. Just makes you think about how laws impact everyday life.
The judge saw it the same way. My job was to collate the evidence and give it to the police prosecutor. If he has enough evidence, he will prosecute. The jury decided he was guilty, and the judge's job at this point was to decide on his punishment. The judge decided he deserved a stern warning. That is a success of the judicial system in my eyes.
It sounds like you were involved in something important. It can be pretty impactful to see how the judicial system works, especially when there's clear evidence. A stern warning can sometimes be the right call, giving someone a chance to change. It's interesting to think about how different cases can turn out, depending on the circumstances and people involved. Makes you realize the weight of those decisions.
Yeah, I know while we were in jail, the guy basically described it as extortion, which I can't say I disagree with. I know that as long as he shows up for his court date, he will get his money back. But yes, he had to pay the $500 to bond out of jail. And I have no idea. I know that I would definitely be going to my lawyer if something like that happened to me. Once I was able to see what had happened, it was too late, and I felt bad for the guy.
Sounds like a tough spot for that guy. Paying to get out of jail is rough, especially when you know you'll get it back if things go right. It's good he has a court date lined up. If it were me, I'd probably also reach out to a lawyer. It's definitely a situation that can leave you feeling a bit helpless, but he's not alone in it.
Well, the arresting on the warrant was not. I acted in good faith that the warrant was valid. That being said, the facts that lead up to the warrant, which I didn't have a part of. It was not my case, nor me petitioning for the warrant. I just saw the guy had a warrant, are questionable. Granted, I don't have a ton of time on the road, but I haven't seen anything like this, nor has anyone told me that something like this can happen. I certainly agree that something is not right.
It's odd how things play out sometimes. You think you're just doing your job, but then you get caught up in something messy. It's not that you wanted to be involved in the situation. You were just trying to follow the rules. But when you realize the whole process seems off, it raises a lot of questions. It makes you wonder what really goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm a deputy sheriff, and I don't know why officers in this guy's department are so spineless. The way it works for us is if someone does something that is blatantly wrong or that we don't feel is right, we speak up, regardless of rank. I've done this multiple times. The majority were against the local city police department that operates within our county. If I saw something like this, I would speak up, and so would my supervisor, and we would both have the full backing of the sheriff.
It's interesting how the culture of a department can change the way officers act. In my experience, having the freedom to voice concerns makes a big difference. I had a friend in a similar position who felt like he could raise issues without fear, and it changed the whole vibe of his workplace. It's good to know that there are still places where integrity is valued over rank.
Your phrase really hit a nerve with me. Not that I am in a situation like this, but what you said applies perfectly to a lot of different circumstances, apparently. It is like feelings can heal easier since they are relative to the person towards whom they're directed, while trust, at least for me, is something that when gets damaged, gets dragged along, as it is in your future relationships, and is really hard to fix. It's awful to have one's feelings being played with. It's true, but betrayal, depending on its intensity, can fuck your future relationships for good. My point of view could be biased, I admit, but my experience taught me this, so it is at least real in my case. Edit, added as it is because a phrase sounded wrong, now sounds righter.
It's interesting how trust and feelings work in relationships. I've seen friends struggle with trust after being let down. It sticks with them and makes future connections tougher. Feelings can be more fluid, but trust, once broken, doesn't just fix itself. It takes time and effort. I get where you're coming from. Experiences shape how we view things. It's a common struggle, even if it's not the same for everyone.
It depends if op is using the right terms. My friend's mother gets half of his father's military pension, even though she has had the same well-to-do boyfriend for 4 years. They're never getting married. Her last boyfriend actually broke up with her over it. He wanted to marry and made plenty to support her, but she wasn't willing to give up her financial independence. I expect that her alimony is probably around $23,000 per year. She drives a Jeep Laredo that obviously isn't her name. That woman is never getting remarried.
That's an interesting situation. It's kind of surprising how some people prioritize financial independence over relationships. Your friend's mom seems really set on maintaining that status, even if it costs her potential happiness with a partner who wants to commit. It's a unique perspective on relationships and money, showing how complex these dynamics can be. Makes you think about how people value things differently.
When I was younger and stupid, I got picked up by the police. My lawyer was an ex-judge who helped design the courthouse. He was also one of my uncle's closest friends. Sheriff was related somehow through my great-grandmother, had her birthdays at his ranch every year all the way to 103. Assistant DA was my uncle's other close friend. Judge was friends with my lawyer and uncle. Son of the chief of police was married to one of my cousins. So yeah, everything kind of disappeared. My mom said to never bring up that arrest.
That's a wild story. Sounds like you had a whole network behind you. It's interesting how connections can really shift things when it comes to trouble. Your mom's advice makes sense though. Sometimes it's best to let things go and not revisit them. Keeps the peace, right?
Damn, that's awesome. Yeah, in Foot Stockton, my brother would get pulled over by the same damn deputy every time he saw him driving around. Car still had Washington plates on it. He had a stack of tickets and was due in court for them. My uncle found out and said, "Well, I think I'll just go to court with you." And so off they went. They got into court, and the judge goes, "Well, howdy, babe. What brings y'all into my court?" And my uncle told him it was because the deputy was picking on his nephew, and the judge goes, "Well, we can't have that. Sorry to hear this is going on, babe." And he then tore the tickets up and told the deputy to stay the hell away from my brother. Found out the judge and my uncle were old friends, still cracks me up.
That's a funny story. It's interesting how connections can change things. Your uncle stepping in made a big difference. The judge seems like a good guy, looking out for someone getting picked on. It's nice to hear about that kind of support. It's not every day you see someone get tickets torn up like that. Makes you think about how friends in the right places can really help out.
Yep. My brother got 20 staples in his scalp when a dude followed him home after a road rage incident and beat him nearly to death with a pipe. His neighbor got the license plate number. The dude was picked up that night and released several hours later. No charges. My brother worked on police Harleys at the time, and one of his contacts confirmed that the guy was a valuable CI. So my brother made flyers with the dude's name and hung them around his neighborhood.
That sounds pretty intense. Your brother went through a lot. It's wild how someone could get away with something like that, especially when there's evidence. Making those flyers was a bold move. It's good to hear that he had support in his neighborhood. Hope he's alright now.
I knew someone that rode a taxi home from a bar. She stumbled as she got out of the taxi, which was parked directly in front of her house. A cop happened to drive by and stopped. He arrested her for public intoxication, even though she was just trying to get home safely. It wouldn't surprise me if she was mouthy, so I suspect he arrested her just because he was mad at her and had a legal reason to arrest her.
That kind of thing happens sometimes. You think you're just trying to get home, but then you get caught up in a tough situation. It's wild how quickly things can escalate over something minor. I can't imagine being in that position, just wanting to get inside but ending up in trouble. It's a reminder that even small mistakes can lead to unexpected consequences. Just a tough break for her, really.
Yep, I was in a car accident where I was taken to the hospital. My car was totaled, but since I wasn't there, I had no control over who took my car and where. A couple of days later, when I could get out of bed and deal with it, my tow was $350, and to get my car was another $150. They had towed it only like 5 miles.
Sounds rough. Getting in an accident is always a hassle. The fees can really add up, especially for just a short tow. I remember a friend went through a similar thing. He wasn't even driving and it still cost him. It's frustrating when you have to deal with all that after the fact, when you're just trying to recover. Hopefully, you're doing better now and got everything sorted out.
I remember an Indian comedian doing a bit along those lines. As a kid, he had a friend who terrorized his parents by threatening to call child services. So one time, the comedian threatened to do the same to his dad. His dad's response, "Oh, well, go ahead. But I happen to know that it will take child services at least 20 minutes to get here. And in that time, someone's gonna get hurt real bad."
That's a classic. It's funny how kids think they have all this power. The dad basically flipped the script, showing he wasn't worried at all. I guess it's a bold way to handle a kid's threat. You can't really argue with that kind of confidence. Makes you think about how parents sometimes have their own tricks up their sleeves. It's a wild dynamic for sure.
Yeah, I agree about trust. I used to use trust issues only in jest or only to describe other people. It dawned on me about a year ago that I have trust issues. I realized that I honestly can't picture myself trusting women in relationships, even though I would be the first to tell other men to not worry about it. Sad face.
Yeah, trust can be tricky. I had a friend who always played it cool about relationships. He'd joke about trust being overrated, but deep down, he struggled with it. It took him a while to admit that he had people in his past who let him down. It became clear to him that he projected that onto new relationships, even when he wanted to be open. It's a tough cycle.
In fact, it's designed to on so many levels. I saw a doco on Supermax prisons, and the architect was thrilled to explain how he had specially designed the skylights so that they save tax money on electricity for light, but recessed them in such a way as no prisoner could ever see any sky. I know they're in there for being horrible people, but I can't find good in people thinking up ways to make it horrible themselves. I think it's creepy.
It's interesting how some people can get so obsessed with the details of a place like that. The architect probably saw it as a feat of design but didn't think about the human side. It's easy to forget that the decisions made have real effects on people's lives. Makes you wonder if there's a line between functionality and cruelty in designs meant for punishment. Just a bit unsettling to think about.
We try to deliver it once. Doesn't hold up though. You attempt to deliver it until it's delivered. You can't fault someone for not knowing something. I know these are probably in place for the shitbags that purposely evade the police, but I've been fucked over by the courts getting documents wrong, and it kills me. Recently moved. Called courthouse to update my address. Got sent a summons for speeding ticket. They combined new and old addresses. Never got the summons. Had to spend the weekend in county lockup. Talked to judge who read out the address. I showed him my driver's license that proved the address was wrong. All he said was, "Oh, we will make sure to fix that." Really? I lost a whole weekend because of that fuck up.
That sounds frustrating. It's annoying when systems don't work as they should, especially when you're trying to do everything right. Updating your address should have helped, but instead it turned into a mess. Spending time in lockup for a mistake like that seems pretty unfair. And then having the judge act like it's no big deal when you show proof just makes it worse. I can see why that would really get to you.
Honestly, when all you've got are outstanding traffic violations, the kind of warrant a judge usually issues in those cases aren't something a cop is necessarily expected to actually arrest you over on the spot. A cop is not necessarily expected to cuff anyone over some repeated speeding violations that haven't been settled yet. I myself have been pulled over with an outstanding warrant over 2 old tickets that I had forgotten all about, calmly informed of the existence of the warrants by the cop. Then was just let go and told to get them taken care of, pay the fine in other words.
Sounds like you had a close call. I guess getting pulled over for old tickets isn't a big deal for some officers. I've had a similar experience, where a cop took a look at my record and just let me off with a warning. It's kind of nerve-wracking in the moment, but at least not every situation leads to a big hassle. Just got to remember to settle those fines.
I studied Thai boxing in my teens. After 6 months or so of fighting, I noticed that getting punched in the head didn't rock my shit like it used to. That probably indicates some brain damage, but it also means some significant advantage in a fight. If you don't know how to fight and you're up against someone practiced, you're probably going to lose.
That's an interesting take on it. Training in Thai boxing really changes your perspective on getting hit. It's strange how you can become desensitized to punches. I guess it's just part of the process. Knowing that you can take a hit gives you a different kind of confidence in a fight, but I wonder about the long-term effects. It's a double-edged sword for sure.
It's a conditioning, though. There's a completely honest sociological aspect to this as well. If we just keep calling them things like convict or prisoner, that's all they see themselves, and they'll think all of society sees them the same way. It sounds dopey, but there's a legitimate reason and benefit to not referring to them as such.
I get where this is coming from. Labels can really shape how people view themselves. If someone constantly hears they're a convict, it can become their identity. It's interesting how simple language can have such a big impact on self-perception. What we call people matters, especially when it comes to changing lives. The way we talk about someone can influence their future more than we realize.
Then they think you shouldn't have it. I wish I had a cell phone back when I was a young man in the South. Everyone carried a knife on their belt. It was a tool, nothing more, nothing less. I watched 2 men fist fight, both with rather large knives on their hip, and not once did they go for their knife. It was a tool to them. I carry a pocket knife, and it's a tool to me. I use it multiple times throughout the day, from mundane things to semi-larger things. I get asked multiple times a day to borrow it. It's stupid useful to have one.
I get that. Back in the day, everyone had a pocket knife, and it was just part of life. I also carry one. It comes in handy for small tasks. People don't really think about them as weapons, just tools. The way folks react to them today is a bit odd. It's just practical to have something like that on hand. It's wild how perceptions change over time.
What they're supposed to be for and what they are for are 2 different things. Unfortunately, American society spent a lot of time developing the idea that all criminals are evil baddies who deserve hell on earth rather than a chance at reform. And then they complain that ex-cons don't learn their lesson and reoffend.
It's interesting how society views criminals. There's this expectation that once someone makes a mistake, they should just figure it out on their own. A friend of mine went to prison for a minor offense, and when he got out, he struggled to find a job. It's hard to change when the system is set up to keep you down. Makes you think about what real rehabilitation looks like.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.